Happy Friday, everybody, from beautiful downtown Springfield, Oregon, and Graveyard Motors, bringing you this week's Special of the Week. Take a look at some of the beauties that we got coming up very soon. Be sure to go to graveyardmotors.com and check out the entire inventory. Now listen, back in the day, if you had a CUDA, you had the girls, you were cool, everybody wanted to be like you with a CUDA. We got one this week that is a 446 barrel automatic, numbers matching everything, shaker hood in violet. What more do you want? Take a look at that little beauty right there. It is as close to mint condition as you could possibly ask for. Now, sure, there's a little bit of surface rust right there in the hood, but overall, this is a beauty. Original shaker hood. It's a 6-barrel. And guess what? Numbers match him. What more do you want? Hey, come on down. Kick a tire or two. You're gonna see that this is the car for you. Look at that white interior. You imagine that, folks? It's a Saturday night, 8 o'clock. You're out cruising the gut. You got your 70 CUDA with this purple in color with a white interior. Got some stones playing on the old 8-track. You are going to the show, my friend, and that's right, it can be yours for a stupid amount of money in today's world. Give me a call right now. Honest Mark, Springfield, Oregon. Everything, and I mean everything, is for sale.
Beneath the fog, behind the rust, sometimes they come back. There's only one internationally recognized Mopar master, Mark Warman, joined by his friends, family, and dream team, the Ghouls.
Nobody wants to take on the stuff that we take on.
Reviving the past.
100% untouched survivor.
Resurrecting the icons of American muscle.
We are the Shaolin priests of Mopar.
Uncovering stories.
It's the baddest car we have here.
And restoring dreams.
The most iconic muscle car on the planet.
Putting cars back where they belong. On the road.
Here we go.
Beyond a passion.
Oh, that's wild.
One man's obsession. With Mopar perfection. This is Graveyard Carz.
Graveyard Motors is something I've been introducing slowly over the past few years, and now it's really become a thing. I've tried selling cars in the past because a basket case, it's not the way to sell a car. They don't sell. It's the way to buy a car, it's just not the way to sell a car. So if you recall back a few episodes ago, Doug and Marty worked on getting the engine disassembled on a 1970 CUDA. That engine was frozen solid, and we ended up having to tear it all the way down to the bare block and drilling out the pistons to be able to get it apart. So I just want to catch you up on what happened with that car and the mentality behind some of the things that we're doing. Anybody can rebuild an engine, but we needed to make sure that there were no cracks in it. Well, there were no cracks in it. We ended up marrying it back to the transmissions as a numbers matching car. Then we started rounding up parts that were either just garbage on the car when it showed up or missing completely. So we ended up rounding up fenders for the car, and we had some good original donor ones that really weren't very bad, but not good enough to go on a nice client's car. Cleaned those up, primered them black, epoxy black, so it would match the car. Even though the car was factory FC7 in violet, somebody had painted it black. It did come with the original shaker hood and is in terrible, terrible shape, but we put it back on the car. It had no header panel, no valance, no front bumper, headlights, grille. We rounded all those up and got them put back on the car. The interior was one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. Been sitting in this barn makeshift thing forever. I'm not even altogether sure this car might not have been underwater at some point. This thing was a real mess. But we got the interior cleaned up so you could at least see that the original Rally instrument cluster was in it and the original AM8 track, some neat features. They're all there and they're restorable. They're just rough. Now this car is really rare, okay? It's a real V code, that's the 5th digit of the VIN that tells you It's a 446 barrel. It's an automatic transmission. So if you just go to the hardtop lineup, 446 barrel automatic 70 Cudas, there were 853. Oddly enough, there were more 4-speeds made. Typically 4-speeds are a little bit rarer. There were 902 of the 4-speeds. But this being an automatic, being a numbers matching engine, numbers matching transmission, original fender tag, original dash bin, all the body numbers are there. This car makes a perfect investment grade restoration for someone. I never tried selling the car as a basket case. I knew that the real value would be in putting it together and making it look like a whole car. You know, and I would like to say that strategy worked. I put this car online, and within 2 days, I already had an offer on the car to buy it. And here's why. In today's world, a restored 1970 Cuda 446 barrel shaker hood numbers car with good colors, good interior, all the good stuff is likely 150 to 200 grand for one done the way that we do it. In this case, you stand back as a potential buyer and you want to do a lot of this work yourself. Now you go online and you see, well, Graveyard Motors has got a 1970 Cuda 446 barrel automatic. Yeah, those are all things. Oh, it's in violet. I love that. We rounded up the original induction, so you pop the hood and the original induction system is there. The original distributor came with it. You walk around the car and it looks like a car. And that very strategy, taking it from the barn when it was in terrible shape, now the car steers and rolls. You can get it onto a transport truck. Look at it sitting there. It looks like a car. From the back, got the beautiful 70 taillights. It's got a bumper on it. It's got the hood, the fenders and the doors and the grille and the header and the lower valance. All the things are on it. You open up the door, it's a mess inside. But it shows that it was an original white interior bench seat car. This is just a great example of Graveyard Motors and what we're trying to do as we move forward with the process. Another car for Graveyard Motors is a 70 Barracuda Grand Coupe. I got this car out of Washington. It was all there. All the metal work had been done, the primer work had been done. I assume some body work had been done, not necessarily up to our standards, but it had been done. And when I first got it, I put it online just the way it was. 3 times that car did not even come close to the reserve on it. That's when you fast forward to me having the idea, we got to put this car together and make it look like a car. I keep talking about this little 70 Barracuda used car being very similar to Doug's. Let me show you just kind of how similar it was. 78, 79, somewhere in there, I go out and I find a 70 Barracuda for sale in the Money Saver. Doug's looking for a car. I call him up, I tell him about it, we go out and we look at it, and his daddy buys it for him. That car was a 70 Barracuda BP 23 Barracuda Grand Coupe, 318, 4-speed car. That in itself is fairly rare, right? 100 and some, 120 maybe of those cars made. Then you add the options Doug's little car had. Now keep in mind, he destroyed the car, because that's what Dougie does. He destroys things and he just smiles. You don't know why he did it. That car was air conditioning, H51. It was Rally instrument cluster, A64. White leather interior, which the leather was standard on the Grand Coupe, so nothing too outrageous there. It was an AM 8-track car. Turn signal indicator, so it was part of the A01 light group. All the Grand Coupes had the overhead consolette, unless it was a convertible. And it was FY1 lemon twist yellow, again with the white interior. Now the car that we bought was mostly disassembled. All the parts were on a trailer, the metal work had been done, the body work had been done. This comparison car that we bought is a 70 Barracuda Grand Coupe, same. 318, same. 4-speed, same. That's very rare demographics. Lemon twist yellow, both cars. That's getting down there. Both Rally instrument cluster cars. The biggest differences between the two cars is Doug's had air conditioning, this one does not. This one has a console, Doug's did not. This one is black interior, leather. Doug's was white interior. And this car does not have the A01 light group turn signal indicators. Otherwise, they're really close to the same cars. So Doug and I worked on putting the drivetrain back in it. Sure, we didn't hook everything up. No way. We just put it in there so that you knew it had the original 318, the original numbers matching 4-speed transmission. The rear end was already under it when we got it. But with the mentality of getting it put together to look like a car, that's where we are right now. Last time you saw it, we put all the drivetrain in it and made it a roller. After that, I hand this car off to Brian and Dylan, which is a great opportunity for Dylan to see what cars were like before they're all fancy and polished and clean and beautiful like you see throughout the shop. What's it like to put a rusty bolt in a rusty hole? Well, this is a good opportunity to learn. Graveyard Motors is not just about trying to make some money on these cars. It's also about getting these cars that are sitting in barns that nobody cares about, that other people pass on, that are absolute garbage basket cases, and giving them a shot at life. It's as much about bringing and saving the cars and getting them into some hands. They don't have to be my hands. Putting that car back on the road again and continuing the tradition of Mopar American Muscle. And for that, I think I should be a candidate for the Nobel Peace Prize.
Still to come, Mark and the Ghouls embark on the massive restoration of a 71 Charger RT 440 Magnum that's been waiting since its wreck in 1988. Mark reveals the factory secret to fortify flimsy sheet metal. Brody continues his journey from painter's assistant to number one's number two. And Mark reminisces about the restoration of an iconic Mopar.
You need to ask permission to do the test drive.
Dad, you're really being dramatic.
Finally, will Mark and Shane's attempted Uniside result in homicide?
I'm gonna have a little chat with my friend Will, I think.
And when his trusted employees' communication skills are called into question, Mark selflessly jumps to his defense.
That's bull crap.
Coming up on this episode of Graveyard Cars. This 1971 Dodge Charger RT 440 Magnum came to us from Tacoma, Washington, home of the Huskies. Dodge made a total of 2,504 Charger RTs that year with a 440 Magnum. Only 332 of them were 4-speed manual transmissions. That left 2,171 Chargers leaving the factory with an automatic transmission. This is one of those cars. While 2,000 copies of a car may not seem special to a Mopar collector, it is absolutely priceless to its longtime owner, Tom. Tom bought this car in 1980 after the Cuda he was driving in high school was totaled. Before the Cuda was laid to rest, Tom removed the original 383 and 4-speed in hopes of finding the perfect candidate to transplant them into, and a few years later, he did just that. While thumbing through the local nickel ads, Tom's mother came across a 1971 Charger RT with a blown-up Magnum. When he saw the car in person, he just knew he had to have it. He made a deal to buy the car, and Tom and his buddy quickly installed the salvaged 383 from the Cuda, leaving the original automatic transmission in the Charger. After a few days of assembly and problem-solving, Tom and his buddies were out cruising the town once again, until fate intervened. In 1988, while sitting at a stoplight in his Charger, a careless driver ran a red light and plowed into a 1988 Dodge Dynasty. Consequently, the Dynasty bounced off of her car and directly impacted the right quarter panel of this legendary 71 Charger RT. After that, like so many car lovers before him, life got in the way. Tom grew up, got married, had children of his own, and his car sat for decades. During that time, Tom collected hard-to-find parts in hopes of one day having the car restored. And now, that day has arrived.
All right, so when I'm talking about the Uniside, putting it on this particular application, I'm talking about the quarter panel itself, along with the B pillar, the actual pillar itself, this section right here, and then this piece right here, which is the quarter inner structure. So when I'm looking at this, this is what our finished product's gonna look like versus putting on a quarter panel separately from putting on a door jamb, separately from putting on this piece, separately from putting on the trunk jamb separately. A very interesting thing here that we really haven't talked about before, why has it got all those contours and shapes to it? And there's a reason for it. Some of them definitely are provisions for things like the quarter window regulator, the quarter window down stops, things to be able to take the interior trim panels. But the majority of what you're seeing when you see all those convoluted areas, all the stampings, the heavy stampings that look like an area this long that's stamped in and back out a quarter inch, those are strength stamps, those are reinforcements. That piece needs to be strong that's in that car. It needs to have a certain amount of ability to resist impact, and you don't want it to move. Who's been to a play and they want the thunder sound? How do they make the thunder sound? They grab an old piece of sheet metal and they warble. That's how flimsy a flat piece of sheet metal is. You're gonna put that in a car and hope that that resists an impact or that it doesn't lose its shape over a period of time. Now take that same big flat piece of sheet metal. You put it on a jig where you can stamp a recessed oval in it, a quarter inch deep recessed oval. Bam comes the big machine, puts that shape in it. You got no more warble, nothing. And the more you put in, the less warble that you have. The majority of the things that you see on inner structure have to do with reinforcing and strength as much, at least, as they do provisions for the parts that are going to go on it. Now, in this case, we're going to have to use a MIG welder, because originally where the wheelhouse meets this piece, you can see very clearly that they're just going along here. They're spot welding all these. That's if you did it one piece at a time, but in this case, we're going to put it on all as one piece. That's going to leave this door jamb opening with all the original spot welds. It's going to be almost impossible to detect that we were ever even on this car, whereas if you looked at it before, it was obvious where that was. The quarter panel is going to section right here at the very roof, and it's going to meet at the trunk jamb, where the trunk jamb meets the Dutchman panel. All of that's going on as a unit. The reason we're putting a complete Uniside on this car, number one, I think it's a great repair. Two is, you can't buy just certain pieces like that quarter interstructure piece. Nobody makes it. AMD just hasn't made that thing yet. So we'd be out scavenging or knocking a car in the head or trying to find that quarter interstructure, putting it together with the new parts that AMD does make. In this particular case, back when the car was wrecked decades ago, the guy went out to a wrecking yard and he found a 72 Charger sitting there that had the quarter panel, the wheelhouse, the right short section of the rocker on it. He bought that and has been toting it around with him for all these years. So since it was a good, complete piece, and it had all the factory spot welds and all that structural integrity that the factory put into it, not rusted, not compromised, why not put it in? In today's world, you wreck a car, you can call up and say, oh, I got a brand new Camry and I need a Uniside. That's pretty common talk. I'm just using that jargon in the old cars because this is very much like a Uniside. Now, as soon as he's done painting this, we're going to move it out, move the quarter panel donor piece in, and I'll go over that at the time. On the other side of the car, you see clearly the parts I just showed you a minute ago are gone. The quarter interstructure piece, the B-pillar, the door striker area, the jamb, that's all gone. But the cuts and the trims to be able to accept it are already there. They just need to get this thing painted before they put it on. So it's going to weld onto here, to the rocker itself. It'll intersect back here at the upper roof inner reinforcement and the wheelhouse. Again, these, because of the accessibility, we're gonna have to use a MIG welder on. I showed you on the other side where it slides up underneath here. This is the quarter panel area. Right back here, it'll end up welding to the rear upper quarter interstructure piece and the Dutchman panel. That they can do some spot welding on because you have accessibility through there. Back here, it'll weld in with the trunk floor extension for the right side, the rear body panel, and again, that trunk lip. All that's gonna go in with factory spot welds on it. That's the advantage to the way we're doing it. The stuff where you are gonna see MIG welding, unless you have the car completely apart, you'd never know that. Cut, trim, space, and you're just trying to get it to a point where you can just weave all of the pieces together and have them fit the way that they're supposed to fit. So don't take for granted when you see something like that happening that it's easy. It's a lot of work and it's skilled labor, but in the end, you have that beautiful fit and that beautiful finish if wheel can paint it without running it. Other major advantage to doing it this way and stopping now to do the paint work, even though it's more cumbersome, is the idea that we can get all that FE5 Rally Red everywhere. We can get it in here, we can treat areas that normally we would have used a rust-proof solution on, which works fine, but what the heck, you're here, get Will in here, get Brody in here, and start jamming all this stuff. These are hard to get to areas when you're painting the car, so you might as well do it. My goal is to have them do all of the primer sealing and the FE5 on all these areas, then they're gonna move it out. At that point, I'll move in the quarter piece that needs to be jammed and show you all the intricate cuts and provisions that had to happen in order for us to be able to make these two go together seamlessly so you don't know anybody was there. Okay, so throwing back to our little 70 Barracuda Grand Coupe, again, another used car, and I put it online for sale. And after 3 different 7-day auctions, it didn't even go as high as I had paid for the car. So I knew selling a basket case wasn't a good idea, which is what led me to some of the things we're talking about now. We needed to put the car together. That's why Doug and I put the engine and the transmission in it. After that, Brian put the taillights, rear bumper, most of the interior back together in it. The dash was already in it. And kind of came to a point there where I wanted to just roll some film on him doing the rest of the pieces. We were going to make a bit out of it, a fun little bit, but watching him and Dylan together is one of the most painful things I've ever had to endure. I mean, it's the equivalent of a non-stop rectal exam for what I think was 4 hours. So what I decided to do was save your trouble and the pain and just give you a point-by-point part installation that we did. The guy had collected some parts like many people who do basket cases. Over the years, they buy tons of parts for this project, but they never get around to the project. This one actually came with the grill and headlight doors, brand new ones from OER, so nice parts. So Ryan had Will paint them, and he installed the grill, the headlights, and the headlight doors. After that, he could move forward to the front bumper. After he got the front bumper on and aligned correctly, he moved down to the valance. All the side markers needed to be cleaned up and detailed and installed. They got that done. So one of the last things that they had to do on it was install the hood. This car is originally a flat hood. The guy had bought a bulge hood, the Raisin Brand hood, so we put that on there. I had Will paint the scoops that go in the raised area of the sport hood, just to give the idea what the color looks like. It's important to see little bits and pieces of the color on a car. That wrapped up the outside of it other than the wheels and the tires. And we have several sets out back on the rack. And so we had a good complete set that held air, put those on there. And once we do all that, park that thing in the middle of the shop and roll camera on it, you've got a complete, good-looking 70 Barracuda Grand Coupe project.
Still to come, is Brody learning everything that Will is teaching him?
No, it's single stage. It's all the same. No, it's not. We don't primer the inside of cars.
Has Mark forgiven the fruit of his loin for taking the general lead on a joyride?
Alyssa and Will conspired to take that car. That's true.
Find out when Graveyard Carz returns.
He just hung up on me and he told me he's gonna call the cops. This light gold 1970 Dodge Super Bee is one of only 1,710 ever built. It features a 383 Magnum, an automatic transmission, and a Ram Charger hood. It's all original and numbers matching, and happens to be the subject of this week's autopsy report. Okay, so remember folks, when we read a fender tag, it's left to right, bottom to top. So let's get started. The first code we have is E63. That's the 383 Magnum engine, and it happens to produce 335 horsepower. D32, heavy duty, 3-speed, automatic transmission. WM21, that's the first 4 digits of the vehicle identification number. W means Coronet series, M means medium price class, 21 means it's a 2-door hardtop. N0G. N represents the 383 Magnum engine, 0 represents the model year, which is in 1970, and G represents where it was built, which is St. Louis, Missouri. 191872. That's the unique serial number for this car. FY4. That's the exterior paint color, which is light gold metallic. H2X9. That's the interior trim code, which tells us it has a black bench seat. TX9. Upper door frame paint, which is black. 217, that's the scheduled production date for this car. So in this case, it's February 17th, 1970. 251333, that's the unique shipping order number for this car. You can find that number on the broadcast sheet or the window sticker. V1X, that's the all black vinyl top. J25, 3-speed wipers, which is mandatory for the Ram Charger hood. M21, drip rail moldings. M31, body belt moldings. N96, which is my dad's favorite hood of all time. That's the Ram Charger cold air induction hood. R11, another one of my dad's favorites.
Nope.
AM Music Master radio.
I hate them. It must be an R22 AM 8-track with reverberator crossover 5-speaker system with built-in fader.
My bad. V8X, that's the transverse stripe in black, otherwise known as the bumblebee stripe. Y16, sales bank car. END, that's the end of these sales codes and the end of this week's autopsy report. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next week.
So on our 1971 Charger, we have in bare metal right here. Brody's gonna start by DP90 this front end, pretty much the whole entire car. We'll get it black, the DP90 epoxy. So at that point, the epoxy's done. He's gonna mix up some primer, kind of primer. We might have rust pits, did some body work already, and get that part primered. So then after that, he's gonna paint the whole inside of the cab, like a nice factory gray single stage, and then spray this quarter panel, the FE5 Rally Red, because you can get to all these areas, because once that quarter goes on, you can't reach them. So then at that point, we'll get the car out of the booth over to the body man, and they can put the quarter panel on. In the booth right now, we have our 71 Charger. We're getting ready to DP90 it along with the Uniside. Brody does all of our DP90 work now. You can kind of explain the process if you want. And what
Primer.
Well, I know it's primer, but explain, because people at home, you guys are new to the show. And
You mix it up, put it in the gun, spray it, just primer.
but what does it do?
Some protective coat.
Okay.
Protects the car from rust issues. It's great for before you go and lay your base coat down, all that fun stuff.
Okay, so partially right.
Thank you.
So it's bare metal. You know, we clean the bare metal really good before we put anything on, but if you miss something, it's an epoxy primer that'll actually neutralize the rust a little bit. It gives it a good foundation to build on. So the car won't rust as Shane continues this build. Then when it comes back to us, we can start our jam work. We just have to scuff it and we're good to go.
Can I just put that out there? It's not we that clean it. You actually give it to me and I clean it.
Yeah.
It's like it comes to me, I clean it, I spray it.
So I wonder if that's why we've had some issues recently.
Nope.
Okay. So this is the DP90 is a great foundation, but it does have to be top coated because once the sun hits it, it starts to break it down pretty fast.
So when you do the DP90 process, you do 2 heavy wet coats to make sure A, it's protected and B, it's covered. So once the DP90 is laid down, I then go on to the primer stage where I will
What?
go.
Primer? No, it's single stage.
It's all the same.
No, it's not. We don't primer the inside of cars. We do the nice factory gray single stage look, not primer.
It's above my pay grade.
So what Brody's trying to say is he puts 2 wet coats on a DP90. Great, that dries. Then after that, we've made a formula that's a nice gray single stage that looks like factory. He goes in, sprays the whole inside of the cab.
It looks like primer.
It's not primer.
I don't have the name off the top of my head.
It's just single stage.
Primer. Primer is easier to say
Where's
than single
Dylan?
stage.
Where's Dylan?
According to Mark, he's in a head-on collision.
Jeez. So after Brody's done not priming the inside of the cab and actually applying gray single stage, it's time to move on to color. Our FE5 Rally Red is also a single stage, and that's where you pick back up.
Okay.
Just retell
What
what
would you
you
like me
do.
to say?
What you do.
Go in there and just drop a little bit and
So now it's time to put the red on. So what does that look like?
you go in there, you mix it, put it in the gun, and you drop it.
People at home.
You're looking at me, so I'm looking at you.
So at that point, then he goes in, mixes up the red single stage. He goes in, he jams the car, all of the areas that need to be red. About 2 or 3 coats, takes him about an hour to get done. Then at that point, the car dries, and we kick it back to Shane, and he can start putting it together.
Word for what I would have said.
You're not even human today.
What am I?
I don't know.
Well, if I'm not human, you must have something in mind.
So to save you people at home from having to listen to my wordsmith of a son trying to explain to you guys what we're doing, we're getting ready to get our Deltron single stage FE5 Rally Red. At that point, we get our jamming going. He will do that, and he'll apply 3 coats to it, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he does a great job because he does all of our jam work. So something we just recently learned that's kind of disappointing is PPG is no longer making single stage because there's just not a need for it in the collision world at all. Restoration world, we use it on every solid color. The challenges that we're gonna have now is we know the colors are perfect in single stage. We don't spray them out, we mix it up and we're good to go. So now we're gonna actually have to mix the base coat up, spray it out because I don't know if the base coat matches as good as a single stage. So I'll mix the base coat up, find an original part, and then have to spray it out, tint, or play around. So it's kind of like starting all over again to a degree. And he can't spray clear at all, so this is gonna be challenging for you, jamming parts.
Good thing you're teaching me.
So what I was able to do though, that's gonna save us for probably the next 2 years, is I reached out to PPG and they sent us every color that I need to do 2 years worth of cars here. So that's going to be great for us for the next couple of years. Then after that, it'll really affect us.
Still to come. With a rear quarter jammed in prep, it's time for Shane to test his mettle.
Feel good about it?
I feel great.
Mark reveals the history he shares with his body man
Shane and I go back maybe as far as Will and I.
and why Shane is the man for the job.
He was one of the highest producing guys at the dealership he worked at.
Finally, when his trusted employees' communication skills are called into question,
Go back and look at the footage. He's the worst.
See, that's the kind of thing that I get tired of Will picking on people.
will Mark and Shane's attempted unicide result in homicide?
I'm gonna have a little chat with my friend Will, I think, right now. That's bull crap.
Find out when Graveyard Carz returns.
You're a real player, Shane.
All right.
Getting ready to install the, I guess you call it a Uniside on today's cars, maybe not so much on this, but it's kind of like a Uniside, right?
When you have that extra piece, it kind of turns it more into a Uniside versus a quarter panel.
You have the pillar and the reinforcement for the quarter. Shane and I go back maybe as far as Will and I. 25 plus years. He was just out of high school. Will was just out of high school, and they both came to work for me. Now, Shane, over the years, dialed in the collision repair. He was one of the highest producing guys at the dealership he worked at, and it was a big shop. He knew how to make money on flat rate. He knew how to do a good job fast. Working on a new car that comes in that's got the front end knocked off of it, give it over to Shane because he'll have that thing back together in 2 or 3 days and they'll be right on the money. So yeah, normally speaking, what you'd be talking about is all these pieces that already be on the car.
Right.
And then you would just put a quarter panel on. So in this case, we've got a used quarter section. This was provided by the customer because it had gotten hit in that pillar, in the B pillar, really, really hard. You had a lot of time repairing the rocker.
Yeah, I had to cut the rocker off and straighten it out.
Yep.
And weld it back on.
Put it right back in again. Shane and I worked together for many, many years. Now let me think about a couple of cars that he did with me. One was a brand new Ford Thunderbird, hitting the butt hard, wadded it all the way up to the windshield. So he came to me one night, the owner, and he was literally in tears. And I said, well, we can fix it, but we got to do a rear clip. We got to do everything. We got to cut it through the floor, cut it through the roof. We had to put a rear clip on it. And I think we bought a red clip off of Thunderbird that was just mint. And Shane grafted those two together, and that guy still has that car today and loves it as much as he ever did. So I know when Shane does something, it's not for today or tomorrow, it's for a lifetime. How many hours would you say you have cutting and trimming and preparing this part, really?
About an hour. Most of it was already cut out.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's all?
Uh-huh.
Well, how did you get 2.5 weeks out of this job?
I was fitting the rest of the car.
Because he's hourly? Just kidding. He does a great job. This is my main man right here. So when it comes to a unibody car, all the gaps you see me walk around constantly pointing out, they're very important that the panel next to them are in the right place. So let's say he put that quarter panel on 1/8 of an inch back too far. It still looked fine from the back and the side and everything, but you hang the door on it and you can't get the gap to close up. The gap's too wide. Some shops, not us, but I've seen shops do it where they hog out the holes, grind out the holes that hold the hinge for the door in place and allows them to move that door back the 1/8 inch. But now what happens? You put your fender on and now you got a gap like that between your fender and your door. You can't hog those holes out. So next thing you know, they bring that door back and they go, oh, we just like to give them wide gaps. Well, it just isn't right. So that's how important it is. If you go back and you look at the General Lee, this is the original car from the 1995 film, Dukes of Hazzard, that holds the record for the longest and highest jump in General Lee history. It was shot out of a catapult. That car was a wadded up mess. And we put a front clip on it. We put everything on it, but we saved a portion of the center section. I am going to bless the union of this original 1970 Coronet front clip onto this 1969 Dodge Charger. While you're admiring all those beautiful gaps on that car, you would just like to say that Alyssa and Will conspired to take that car. That's true.
You need to ask permission to do the test drive.
Why wouldn't we? Oh my God.
So in your mind, you just take the car, anytime you want, and you don't have to ask permission.
Dad, you're really being dramatic.
How dramatic is it going to be when I call the cops on your
This
ass?
is part of our job. This is part of our job. We got to test drive the car. Oh, God. He just hung up on me and he told me he's going to call the cops. Like, really? Okay, Dad.
And I just decided that since I had a 1975 Plymouth Fury, I would use that as my police car to catch him in.
You got a driver's license and registration, boy?
No, officer, I
You got no driver's license?
No.
Very fun stuff, right? Right up to the point where your daughter gets out of the back seat and she's dressed like Daisy Duke.
What's this? Why
What's
are you wearing
this?
little tiny... This is an officer of the law outfit. Why
Did
are
it
your
not have
breasts
it in your
sticking out?
size?
I don't know. Why are you wearing dental
Roll
floss
it
for
in
shorts?
like a wrapper on a
I'm
Tootsie
wearing it.
Roll.
I happen to be wearing... What?
When you look at that car done, and you look at it going down the road, the hood to the fender gap, fender to door, door to quarter, deck lid to Dutchman, all of them great lines, because Ryan, when he did that car, he took his time to make sure that every panel and every part went on it exactly where it's supposed to go. That got a front clip off of a 70 Coronet, and he grafted it in, pre-fit all the sheet metal before he ever started welding. The same thing on our 69 Cuda, our little blue car, gorgeous little car. That front clip was in bad shape. The owner actually had harvested a 69 clip off of another car long before AMD started making all the sheet metal for these things. So I opted to go with a clip on that. The wrecking yard term for it is a cowl cut clip. So it just basically means you take a chop saw and cut it right through the cowl and you get everything on the front. That one was a little more because I think it had the frame rails on it. So all the way back to the torsion bar crossbar. The point is, Shane knows what he's doing. He's making sure everything's right on this car, and it takes forever. If you have a car and you think, why is it taking so long? Why has it been in the metal shop for 4 months? That's why. There's no way one guy can rush it any more than that. And if you put 5 guys on it, it's not going to get done right. You can't rush excellence. That's just a fact. So that brings us kind of up to where we're at. We're going to put this on as one unit. This piece that you see right here is going to go right up against the inner structure on the back. This is going to lay down over the top of it. This right here is going to butt right up against what's existing in the car right now. So that part's easy. The only hard part about putting it on like this is probably weaving the top of the quarter panel underneath the sail
Under the
area
roof.
and then sliding it back into place. All right, I want to flip it over real quick if you don't mind and show these guys what the other side looks like, just so you can get an idea before we put it on. So now you guys can see this is a quarter panel. This is what we're used to doing. You see all the paint work and the jam work done on the inside of it. What I was talking about, what we're kind of calling this more like a Uniside, is because this piece here is B-pillar or striker pillar area. That's a serviceable part. You can buy that separate from like AMD. You could buy it brand new from the factory back in the day. Normally this piece would be on, that inner structure piece for the quarter glass would be on. Then all we'd be doing is putting this quarter panel on. So where we're standing right now is, this has got to go over there, weave up underneath the roof. Once it's up underneath the roof, it gets locked down into place, starts sliding back until we make all the connections.
Yeah, just go slide right on.
You feel good about it?
I feel great.
Great.
It's an OEM
my
part.
man.
It's gonna
It is
go
an
on
OEM
great.
part. You know it's going to fit nice. No hitting. You've already pre-fit it.
I have already pre-fitted.
And the trunk gutter is already welded on.
Yeah,
'cause that
most
was
of
all
the
part
pieces
it.
are already on that will help it fit, so.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, so that tucks up there. Now I got to make sure this one's under here, right? Okay. That goes there. This goes here. Wow, look at that. Just literally sliding into place. That is beautiful. Wow, all the original holes lining up. Are you doing a screw back here?
I'm a clamp everywhere.
Lots of screws? Okay, great. So I've used the words Uniside on this car. Just to be clear, back in 1971, you couldn't go into Chrysler and get a quarter inner structure, a quarter panel, a a rocker, a hinge pillar, an outer wheelhouse, all welded together and ready to go on. They just didn't do it. You had to buy each individual component and put it on. And the only way you were able to put on a piece that big at one time was to go to a junkyard like this guy did and cut half the car or a third of the car up and dissect all the pieces off it and install it. It's not that they're welded all together, but a Uniside, for example, on a new car could easily mean the quarter panel with the upper roof rail, the B pillar, the C pillar, the rocker, the A pillar, and part of the cowl. That's why I use the term Uniside. Okay, go ahead and clamp it off. Jed, clamp it off. Okay, so right now he's just running through and putting all of his clamps back on that he's probably done 50 times. Gonna put the screws in it. He'll have a little bit of fine adjusting to make sure that the quarter meets the door before he starts welding on it. But I think for the most part, what do you think, Shane? That's the hard stuff's over?
Yep.
Yep. Will says you had trouble communicating with people. You ever seen that?
I've never heard about that
I've
before.
never heard about it in my life. I don't, see, that's the kind of thing that I get tired of Will picking on people. You don't see me doing it. I go through here and I build people up. I make them think that anything is that fair to say, Josh? I build people up? Thank you. Count Chocula? Thank you, sir. Thank you, my man. Appreciate you keeping it real.
This is hilarious. Mark was the very first one to jump on top of Shane about his lack of communication, the way he mumbles. Go back and look at the footage. He's the worst, and I just don't get it. Mark picks on everybody. He's not selective about who he picks on. He picks on me, Brody, picks on Dylan. And the way he picked on previous cast members, we'll just let that one be.
So with that, I'm gonna let him go about tacking everything in place, and the next time we see this, he will be welding away. So I'm gonna have a little chat with my friend Will, I think, right now. That's bull crap. You're a real player, Shane.
All right.
You won't see a spot welder going on here, folks. What we have to do is we have to graft this great big piece into a car using a MIG welder, because all the spot welding's done. He welds the quarter inner structure to the floor, the B pillar to the rocker, to the floor, to the pinch weld, the quarter inner structure to the lower roof section where it intersects there, and those all intersect with the wheelhouse. You'll see him going up and down that wheelhouse with a MIG welder. The Dutchman panel to the quarter, the rear body panel to the quarter inner structure, all of the pieces that marry this great big used piece of metal to the car. So when you stand back now and all the smoke clears and everybody's done chanting your name, you've got a 1971 Charger put together with all OEM sheet metal. Looking new, ready to roll. So guys, just a quick update. The little 70 Barracuda that I couldn't sell, the little car that couldn't, well, it did. It sold the first day online because it was a complete car. And remember, I tried 3 times before, 1 week long auctions, nothing. So that only validates what I'm saying. If you guys have a car at home or you know somebody, now there's a lot of wives up there upset, very upset with their husbands because 25 years ago, their husband says, I gotta have that Charger, I gotta have that Cuda, I gotta have that Roadrunner GTX. Well, are you gonna work on it? Yeah, I'm gonna work on it. And they do. They tear it apart and order $1 million worth of parts, and that's where it sits. Sooner or later, the wife wins and says, I want it out of my garage. You call up old Trey, I'll drag it out of there, I'll load up all the parts, I'll handle everything for you. All you gotta do is count the dough, the Bunsen burners, the sweet little earners. That's right, gonna get some of Trey's earners. I would like to say, however, my top priority has and always will be graveyard cars. I love restoring the cars, they are my life. I'm not segueing someday to doing nothing but selling cars. Graveyard cars, priority number 1. Like the old Ford commercial. At graveyard cars, customers are number 1. However, in the same spirit, Ford's a pile of crap. Nobody wants to drive one. Found on road dead. Heard that one before? An old rebuilt Dodge. You ever heard that one? Yeah, that's a good one, huh? Can't say that one.